Hello and welcome inside the CBC Newsroom. I'm Arthi Pole. The threat of Alberta separatism continues to reverberate across the country. Just a short time ago, at an event in Ottawa, Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked again about the province's decision to hold what is essentially a referendum on the controversial issue.
This is an observation from experience. In these separation issues, it is often advanced that vote for this and it's a free option. Vote for this and we will strengthen our hand in a future negotiation. That is a very dangerous bluff. That is a very dangerous bluff. I saw firsthand what happened in the United Kingdom when the view was vote for this, it'll be soft and then we'll negotiate, etc. And they ended up, and they're still 10 years later trying to undo what people didn't think they were voting for, but what they ended up having.
And the CBC's Janice McGregor is in Ottawa. She joins us now live. So Janice, what more can you tell us about Ottawa's position on Alberta's plan to deal with the separatist issue in the province, since we just heard from Carney last hour?
Yeah, those cautionary words he was sounding, the alarm he was sounding there with that clip you played, a bit of a contrast to how he first reacted when he came out on Friday morning. A much stronger, kind of sterner tone, more clear tone that he would be actively involved campaigning, but also saying that his government is now running a due diligence on the particular question involved. He said they have an obligation to look and see if this is consistent with the Federal Clarity Act. He said that work is underway and that they're looking at questions such as whether there would be a role for Parliament. Now, previously, the thinking had been that because this wasn't going to be a binding referendum, but as you say, a referendum about maybe having a referendum in the future, that it wouldn't necessarily be triggering engagement from Parliament at this point. And indeed, this is uncharted territory. We don't really know how this process would work of Parliament sort of weighing in on the appropriateness or the clarity of a referendum question. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister indicating that they are now looking at it. This is something that was the request of chiefs from the Treaty 8 First Nations who put out a release on Friday saying that they were writing to the Prime Minister asking for Alberta's question to be reviewed by Parliament. Based on the Prime Minister's words today, this would seem to suggest that request is being seriously considered and perhaps even, taken up depending on what they conclude from this due diligence. So a significant escalation in terms of the Prime Minister's words today. And also, I think we're going to play a little bit more tape from what he had to say, a bit more insight into how he really parts company with Danielle Smith's strategy here.
The Premier doesn't always take my advice, but can I finish my please? Look, is it helpful to ask these fundamental questions? No, it's not helpful. Of course, it's not. Is it the democratic will of Albertans? Did they vote for this in the last provincial election? No, they didn't. It wasn't on the ballot paper.
Compared to kind of the emotional appeal of freedom for Alberta, cooperative federalism doesn't really make for a very strong kind of bumper sticker slogan for the Remain side, if we're going to call it that. The Prime Minister acknowledged that being in Canada is about more than economic arguments, that it does engage sort of social issues and feelings, how people look after each other, he said. But he did try to give some examples of the sort of cooperative federalism his government's working on, including in French, making note of the fact that there are discussions underway apparently with Quebec's government now about some kind of an agreement on major project approvals in the future. So we know that could be another front in terms of the national unity battle, and wanting it to be known that they are trying to engage all these various interests to try to make this federalism work.
Now, of course, as all of this looms in Alberta, that is exactly where Western premiers are going to be meeting today for 2 days. I mean, how is all of this going to play out?
Yeah, indeed, with Danielle Smith being the host for what is usually a spring meeting of the Western provinces and the 3 territories, a bit of a precursor meeting to when the full group of premiers meet every summer. So what's on the agenda? Smith said over the weekend that she was perhaps wanting to discuss equalization formulas. That is, of course, another Western grievance. She has mused about wondering if other premiers might be interested in opening the Constitution to have another look at the section on Indigenous rights. Her official release about the agenda talks about growth, trade, Arctic security, defense, energy security, nation-building infrastructure, public safety, and justice. I note that a number of those things are federal jurisdiction, but we have seen this in recent premiers meetings where they come out with communiques very much all about everything they agree that Ottawa is doing wrong, instead of in previous years when premiers meetings were about things like sort of sharing best practices on healthcare and pharmaceutical drugs and interprovincial trade barriers. There's a business group out today reminding Canadians that premiers have yet to fulfill everything they promised in terms of lowering interprovincial barriers on alcohol sales. There is a lot of work to be done maybe to get people on the same page and come up with a common agenda. The tensions over the sovereignty referendum and the pipeline politics should make for a very interesting scene later today when David Eby in particular is in the same room as Danielle Smith.
No doubt. Okay, thanks for this, Janice. That's CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa.